Okay. My question is, do Iowa and New Hampshire get too much attention? I'm just gonna make sure. Do Iowa and New Hampshire have too much influence in the presidential politics? You ready? Have you started video taping?
Yes.
The Iowa caucus started in 1973, and it has continued ever since. And it's one of the major factors in deciding who is the presidential nominee to represent their party in the general election. And last time, in 2012, Rick Santorum won the Iowa caucus, and many people were asking the question, does Iowa have too much power in getting presidential nominees to be the candidate for office? Because Rick Santorum didn't get much of the vote in many of the other states, but he got a very high percent of the vote in Iowa, and this pushed him so far that he was one of the last people contending against Mitt Romney for the presidential nomination. So when asked the question, do Iowa and New Hampshire get too much power or influence in the presidential politics, the answer is clearly yes, because it's neither of them are representative of the country. And they're not representative in three areas. First, in age. Second, in race. And lastly, in religion. So when we look at Iowa and New Hampshire's age, a stat by the Washington Post in 2011 showed that New Hampshire had 41.1 as their average median age for the state, and Iowa had 38.2. But the average for the country is actually 36.8. So we can see that they're both averagely older than the average in the country, so they're not representative in race. And also, according to the stat by the Washington Post, 18 to 29-year-olds usually vote Democratic by a margin of 10%. 30 to 59-year-olds usually have an average between both Republican and Democratic, so they're pretty even. And anyone above the age of 60 has a 10% leaning towards conservative party. So we can see that as you age, there's more you're more conservative. And so both of these states, as they age, are more by the trends are more conservative. And so we can see that Iowa and New Hampshire aren't very good representations of the United States population because of their age. But not only is this true for age, it's also true for race. According to the Iowa Data Center in last year, their stat for last year, they have a 90.2% white population. And for New Hampshire, it's 94.0%, while the average for the United States is 66.7. So we can see that they're majority white and by a significant margin compared to the entirety of the United States. Also, minority groups tend to vote Democratic. According to a stat by the Huffington Post on October 12th last year, minority groups voted 76% Democratic, and this is a huge margin. And so we can see that minority votes are clearly voting for Democrats, and they skew the votes toward the Democrat, making it more even. But in these two states, we have majority white populations, so we don't have a very good representation of our country in these two states. And they also have a lot of power because they're the first two in the caucus and primary system. But not only is race an important factor, but also religion. Although most of our country is Christian, in Iowa, according to the Wall Street Journal, there's a 77% Christian population, and a 36% of those Christians are evangelist. So Rick Santorum was able to get through Iowa with a lot of support because of these evangelical voters. And so According to a stat by um, the New York Times, in Iowa, 36% of evangelical voters voted for Rick Santorum. So we can see that a lot of these evangelical voters, who make up a large portion of the state itself, are voting for candidates that most of the country doesn't agree with, because Rick Santorum wasn't really voted in by most of the rest of the country. And so when we come back to today's question, do Iowa and New Hampshire have too much influence in the presidential politics? The answer is clearly yes, uh, because they're not a good representation of our country in three major ways: in age, race, and religion.